Okay, so welcome back, guys, to our next lesson here on Jacksonian America. We're going to be talking about some pretty significant events, the Tariff of Abominations and the Secession crisis, the Bank War. We're going to get to all that. The warm-up for this is going to be on the next two slides, so I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to that. There's a picture on the next slide, and there's some questions that I'd like you to, again, if you're doing this on your own, you'll have to obviously do this on your own. Again, if you're in class, we're going to do them together here with a shoulder buddy. But you've got this picture here that is portraying Jacksonian America, and I would like you to kind of do some thinking about that. So what is it? It is the spread of democracy. I won't spoil it for those people who haven't done the warm-up yet, okay? But, so pause, ignore what you see on the screen. But what is Jacksonian democracy? It's generally this term that historians use that references because Andrew Jackson is so influential in this time period that this idea that the numbers of white men who are voting has increased dramatically, and the growth of democracy and the power that we see in that reflects that. And the reason why is because a lot of the property requirements that are going on with voting at this time, again, by the time you hit the 1830s, are really starting to disappear. And so that's going to enfranchise the power of non-landowning white men. And so we kind of give it this term, Jacksonian democracy, named after that. Now, that all being said, of course, there is a huge amount of things that are not related to Jackson that we're going to have to talk about. The slavery crisis, to, all the issues that are going on with the market and industrial revolutions. So again, just note, this is more talking about politics and government and those kind of things. So before we go on here, I'd like you to draw me a picture of it. Again, you'll do this on Pear Deck, but let's get on to the good stuff. Okay, so we're going to be analyzing the culture of Jacksonian America and summarizing its major traits. Hopefully we would have done that in this activity that we just knocked out there. But here's really what I'm going to focus on today for this mini lesson. Summarizing the events of the Tariff of 1828 and the nullification crisis and explaining why we should care about them. Okay, and then last but not least, I will mention this. Okay, and I'll do some description at the end of this here. What were Jackson's concerns in the Bank War, and what were some of the events that went on with that. Okay, and we'll kind of talk about this 1/3 comic that we have to do. So let's talk about Jackson's accidental Tariff of Abomination and Calhoun's nullification, and the secession crisis that this is going to cause. All right. So we're going to have some very big questions that are being debated here in this topic. Number one, as I adjust my webcam here because I'm sitting up and not slouching anymore. Number one, this incident is going to go back to some very big debates that have happened between, who's in charge ultimately. Is it the states or is it the federal government? Who actually has more power in this new system that's being created? And then second, there's always this question, and it still is with us to this very day, about how much power a president actually has or should wield, okay? Again, democracy and giving a person power, one person a lot of power, can have, in the hands of somebody, very good, can have very positive consequences, but then in the hands of somebody maybe not so good, it has very disastrous consequences. So, again, lots of power talk here in this lesson. So let's talk about some background here. Before we get to this, this Tariff of Abominations that is going to happen, we have to remember what happened back in 1824, and that is John Quincy Adams stole, quote unquote, the election from Andrew Jackson. At least that's how Andrew Jackson would see it, right? Stole the election from him in what was called the corrupt bargain. Again, that was making Henry Clay then his Secretary of State after Clay switched all of his votes to get John Quincy Adams elected. Okay, now what's happened in the background then is that, of course, Andrew Jackson's going to run again in 1828. Martin Van Buren has been, to the nth degree, getting Jackson organized to do this. And again, Martin Van Buren is a master political manipulator and party organizer, and really, as soon as Jackson starts running for 1828, as soon as 1824 happens, okay, they start calling themselves the Democrats. So we start to hear that name first used. They drop the Republican, okay, part of it. Now again, kind of what happens here, as I move my face so you can see everything, is that we kind of see what Jackson's plan is for getting elected starts to kind of come out. Because again, Jackson, he's still in the Senate, okay? He's still in the Senate. He's still influential in all the levers of government by this time, okay? But he's trying to take a very kind of middle of the road spot, if that kind of makes sense. So he's again running on this like self-made man, poor white upscrabble kind of beginning. He's popular with Northeastern workers. He's popular in the South, and he even uses this word like the tariffs that we're going to have are going to be judicious. Whatever that means, like tariffs can be judges. No, like judicious means like fair. So again, like trying not to make the South mad by having them too high, and trying not to make the North mad by having them too low. Again, trying to get himself elected is the point here, but he's going to be a little bit more devious, and let's get to how he does that. Okay, let's talk about what some of these other kind of veins are running into this. Number one, Jackson is going to be also running on a couple other big platforms, and they're pretty much all hinged around the spoils system. Okay, so and I guess then some other stuff with internal improvements. We'll get to that in a second. So let's talk about what rotation and decentralization is. Rotation is Jackson makes no qualms about this, that he is going to, if elected, going to get rid of people that are the professional politicians. To use a modern day term, he's going to drain the swamp, quote unquote. And his idea there is he's going to appoint people who are politically, personally loyal to him. Okay, so he's going to rotate those positions out. The second kind of big emphasis for Jackson is that he's going to decentralize things. So he's going to try to, as much as he is going to absolutely be president and wield national power, he's going to stop those internal development projects like roads and canals, that are, again, more like nationally funded federal projects. And he's going to try to kind of put power back in state and local hands. That would be, we can broadly say, the spoils system and decentralization are kind of his two big emphasis, if you will. Now, hold on to those kind of in the back of your brain, because that's going to inform this whole Tariff of Abominations crisis we're about to have, and then also the bank conflict. Okay, so let's talk about this Tariff of Abominations. Okay, again, what is a tariff? If you don't know, it is a tax on imported goods. Okay, so that means that, for example, manufacturers really, really like it because that protects them in this whole new industrial revolution thing, and the South hates it, right? Just, again, good coverage. But there's something that happens, again, getting into the machinations of Congress and those kind of things, is that a very special tariff in 1828 comes up, and it is nicknamed, for good reason, the Tariff of Abominations, as you can see there. Okay, and it increases the tax on imported goods by 50%. Okay, and again, like, that's crazy high, right? Like, if you're gonna buy like a $500 piece of machinery, that's now costing you $750. It's a huge tax, right? So this is coming up in Congress and being debated, and what Jackson plans, okay, and again, the North would normally be in favor of this, right? They would be all down for this. The South would hate it, okay? Is that Jackson uses his manipulations as an influence that he had with congressmen at the time, and he gets Democrats who are loyal to him, again, because everybody's all in the Democratic Republican Party at this point, right? to include a new provision in the bill. And what this would do is it would increase a tax on raw materials as well. So this would also hurt the North. So his goal is to make this the most painful thing possible. Okay, that the North will hate it, the South will hate it, everybody will hate it. The question is, though, why? Why do you think Jackson would do it? So I'd like you to answer this on Pear Deck, again, if you're doing this on your own. But I would encourage you to pause this video to take some time to think about why would Jackson make this the ugliest, abominable, to borrow a word, bill of all time? Well, it's because the idea, okay, again, Jackson's a Southerner, right? And he has run before on this platform of, lower tariffs. Again, he's friendly to the South, but he's calling for this in this election, this judicious tariff, right? That we need fair, we need something that is there, but it's going to be fair for everybody. But his scheme is this: you make something so ugly that the North and South stand up, they reject it, and they're like, no, we can't do this. And then Jackson will stand up and say, you're right, this tariff is an abomination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it'll make him look like a hero, right? You manufacture the crisis, and you stand up, and everybody hails you as the saving redeemer of a hero that you are. But this is going to backfire, or does it? Okay, because here's what actually happens. The North actually goes for it, completely unexpectedly, and we'll kind of help explain why this happens, and Congress passes it. This Tariff of Abomination actually goes through, and Jackson had no intention of this occurring at all. It's a disaster, or is it? Because here's what happens. Okay, because most of the blame for this tariff goes on to the sitting president at the time. Because again, John Quincy Adams, he's a Northerner. Okay, he's going to go with his Northern congressman on this, and again, he's in office until January, right? March, okay, depending on when certain amendments come in place, right? And John Quincy Adams gets blamed for this tariff getting signed. I mean, he did sign it, right? And he loses the election because of it. So who was he running up against? Of course, it was Andrew Jackson, right? So Jackson now is president, okay? But this is going to cause a huge problem. Let's back up and kind of explain why the North went for this, okay? The North goes along with this because they believe that eventually the material part of it that got tacked on by Jackson would eventually get gotten rid of. Okay, so this thing is on the books for a good long while, about 4 years. And what starts to happen, okay, is that of course, who is this thing really, really going to hurt? It's going to hurt the South. And the South hates this tariff. In particular, the Palmetto State that is right there. The confusing flag that I always thought was an eyeball staring down at, or staring up and away from a palm tree. Fun story. That is South Carolina. Okay. Now the North realizes this is a problem, and it actually lowers a tariff, and it lowers the tariff. Okay, in 1832, because it realizes this is an issue. But South Carolina, in their upstart bringingness that is them, they call a state convention, and they threaten to nullify, ignore, and not enforce the tariff. So now we got a bit of an issue, because we have resurrected that old thing, that ghost that I would tell you would come back and haunt us, that Jefferson and Madison put together. It was that Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, right? The idea that all the United States is a bunch of states, and if it's just a bunch of states and the states say that something's wrong, it doesn't exist, okay? Oh boy. So we got a problem. What is Jackson going to do? I'd like you to again predict on Pear Deck. Okay, so what happens? Well, it gets worse. Okay, South Carolina not only threatens to nullify the tariff, they go on and they publish something called the South Carolina Exposition and Protest. It is written by Jackson's own vice president at the time, Calhoun. Okay, Calhoun, John C. Calhoun, you might remember him from the election of 1824. He had dropped out to support Jackson. He had become his vice president in 1828. He's starting to switch over to becoming a states' rights Democrat. And he was kind of like more of like, okay, I like the South, but I still believe the federal government is supreme and in charge. He's changing. And what he does is he totally vibes off of Jefferson and Madison in the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. So what do they happen? Like, what are they threatening? Okay. Again, the North has passed a lower tariff in 1832, and South Carolina looks at that lower tariff, and instead of saying like, oh, thanks, I guess that makes it better, they nullify it, and then they go a step further. They threaten to secede from the Union, like from the United States, if it gets enforced. And all of a sudden now, Jackson has a huge problem on his hands. What in the heck is he going to do? So what should he do about South Carolina? On the one hand, he's president now of the United States. Okay, like he has to enforce federal power. But then on the other hand, he's a Southerner. He understands and he gets where the South is coming from. This is a huge issue, and it's going to cause some problems. So Jackson he's going to take the best. I want the best of both worlds. Okay, he's not going for boxers. He's not going for briefs. He's doing boxer briefs. Okay, he passes something called the Force Bill. Okay, and that is going to be the first step. So let's talk about this. Again, he understands the South, but as president, he has to enforce federal supremacy. So what's the first thing? Okay, it's the carrot and the stick, if you will. This is the stick part of it, is the Force Bill. It says Congress can use military force to enforce tariff collection. They can do it. We can use the military to collect taxes. It will happen. Now, think about this here for a second. Like, using the military to forcibly collect taxes from American people kind of sounds like the whole, like revolution thing, right? And we'll come back to that in a second. Okay, but then, here's the carrot part of it. The government passes a new tariff act that by 1842, in about 10 years, it will take the tariff back down to what it was at 1816. Okay, so force and relax. He's trying to have the best of both worlds here. Okay, so South Carolina indeed does back down. Okay, so why should we care about this? Okay, this is a whole bunch of things. Okay, number one, this is a really good example that we have early on of a conflict between state and federal supremacy, right? Who's in charge? Who actually has the power? It's also, notice, an early instance of a pretty severe incident of North and South conflict. And we haven't even gotten to the whole Missouri Compromise thing, which is also going on in the middle of this. We'll get to that later. Just like the Founding Fathers, we'll kick the whole slavery can thing down the road. Okay? Then, the importance of the tariff, we can see that here. Again, it sounds like really, really silly. Like, why should taxes matter? Well, it almost caused like the first state to secede from the Union, 30 something years before the Civil War even happens. Okay. Also, and this is the last one, this, especially the Force Bill, will kind of reinforce this perception by some members out there, some disaffected, we'll call them Diet Federalists / Democrats, to make something come together called the Whig Party. Okay, and we will kind of come back to them later. Okay, so that right there is your Tariff of Abominations crisis. Now, to help you with this, I've got something here called Order Up. It is nothing that is due, but it could help you. We'll do it in class so you can actually practice it. What you do is you take our tickets here, just like a kitchen, and you order them up. You can delete this ticket up here at the top to make room, and you stick it onto the bars, from left to right, top to bottom, and then the key is on the next slide, so you can check and see if you got them right, so again, a really good way if you're struggling to understand the events of the Tariff of Abominations. This, doing something interactive like this can really, really help you understand. Okay, cool. Excellent. Let's go on to the next thing. Again, not collecting that is something that might help you. Right here are 2 videos on the Bank War. This is another super influential event that happens during Jackson's presidency, we will also check that out. Okay. So again, you want to be able to explain what Jackson's concerns are with that and then summarize what happens with it. Here's the point that I want to get to where I'm going to take some time now and explain what this thing is, the 1/3 comic. Okay, so leaving all of this Jacksonian America stuff, I would like you to kind of pick one of three, hence the 1/3 comics, and really use this as a way to kind of demonstrate your knowledge of one of these three things. So the first thing, okay, you can do the Tariff of Abominations and Nullification Crisis. That could be one. You would do an 8-panel comic on that. 2 would be the Bank War. Okay, and then 3 would be Forcible Indian Removal, okay, or the Trail of Tears. That will be taught next class because we simply won't have time to get to it in this particular block. Okay, the link to the comic is right here. Okay, if you would like to do it online, again, I will have it available in paper if you would like to do so. But okay, let's talk about what I'm expecting here from your comic. Number one, your artwork has to match your descriptions below, right? So remember, we got a picture up top. Okay, we got a couple lines of, maybe a couple sentences of describing what it is. And again, you're giving us that narrative, right, of these particular things. Here's what I would like you to do. Okay, please, 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 please make sure that you hit both of the objectives in your comic. Okay, so whenever you do your comic, for example, on like the Tariff of 1828 and Nullification Crisis, number one, as you can see right here, summarize the events of the tariff. That's the first step. And then I would leave like 2 panels at least to do the second thing, explaining its significance. Please, please, please don't forget this thing. I can't emphasize enough. You got to make sure you get the second objective. Second thing here, similar idea, right? Summarize the events of the Bank War. Again, do that. And then I would leave like 2 panels. Why is Jackson so concerned about the National Bank of the United States? Okay. And the third one, summarize the major events in Jackson's forced Indian removal and explain the varied motivations against or for it. You got to make sure you do both. Okay. So that is the 1/3 comic. All right. So with that, that is the end of this particular lesson, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.